Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Friday, September 1st, 2023, and today we're going to be talking about Governor Ron DeSantis and his presidential election bid and how his super PAC, the Never Back Down PAC, which is not directly associated with him but very much has been pushing him to run for office, has been supporting him throughout the entirety of his presidential bid, and has served as this extension wing with a lot of money from many major donors, now ending its door-knocking campaign in Nevada and many major Super Tuesday states, including the notable state of Texas. Now, this DeSantis Super PAC is one that is, again, disconnected from the campaign. But they have been very supportive of the governor and have been pushing him in certain directions throughout the primary process, whether that be on policy stances, on debate tactics, whatever it is. They have a major influence on the direction of the campaign. And with this decision to end the door knocking, we have found ourselves looking at it from the lens of an autopsy, looking back on the DeSantis campaign, looking at it head on, seeing what's wrong, what's right, and what's going to indicate potential dropouts, potential changes, potential surges, and whatever it might be when it boils down to this campaign. Now, first things first, on the service level, the general understanding is that it is never good to be pulling out of states. It is never good to have not enough resources that you simply can't be fighting everywhere at once. The Trump campaign has been very clear. They have a ground game. They have a strategy. They have a winning team that has been dominating in the polls since the moment that President Trump announced his bid for the presidency. Ron DeSantis has gone up and down, more down than up recently, especially over the past couple of months where Ron DeSantis on the Real Clear Politics average has dropped down to just 13.5% nationwide. We can see that at a different period in time. Well, though RCP doesn't give as much credit to Ron DeSantis for where the polls actually showed him, showing that his best performance was being down about 14 points, 12 points nationwide, FiveThirtyEight has a better metric that shows that at a period of time in February of 2023, Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis were within just 2 percentage points of each other. This was following the 2022 midterm elections, in which the polls had narrowed up quite significantly because voters were tired of losing. They didn't want to lose under President Trump, but with this time frame, Donald Trump had already announced on November 14th, 2022. And with that announcement, he used it to attack Ron DeSantis and attack many other mainstream Republicans to a point where they simply didn't have a viable pathway to victory. The only one who really had that chance was Ron DeSantis, but over time, his credibility started to fall. Donald Trump started to win back over many mainstream GOP primary voters and was able to build a narrative around Ron DeSantis. So by the time he announced, he started to collapse almost immediately. The more that voters saw him, the less they liked him. And this isn't the first time that we see the DeSantis campaign in a complete total, reconsideration of their strategy, reconsideration of how they approach him as a candidate. The DeSantis campaign very publicly came out and did this reboot. They did this change and, shakeup of staff, firing a third of their staffers, completely rechanging their major leadership, including replacing his main campaign manager with his chief of staff from the Florida governor's mansion. I mean, with this public reboot, the expectation was that there would be some type of benefit. And what we have found is not only there was not a benefit, but rather a detriment to the DeSantis campaign. His numbers have only continued to fall pretty steadily over the past couple of months, with a very slight uptick from 13.5% to 14.5%, which has since dropped down back to 13.5% nationwide. The only person who really is in a very good position when it comes down to the 2024 GOP nomination is, of course, President Donald Trump. Where we are right now, we can see that the betting markets aren't exactly in favor of Ron DeSantis, and the race to the White House forecast, the only forecast out there for the GOP primary, shows that Donald Trump is on track to win roughly 90 to 95% of all of the delegates today. Isn't that something that is crazy to think about, that President Donald Trump is on track to have a dominating victory when it comes down to nearly every single state on the map? I mean, we can see here that in every single map, assuming the field does not consolidate, Donald Trump wins. You take after Nevada, which is the state that the DeSantis PAC is actually pulling out of here. This is not the right article here. Pulling out of Nevada, the article has a little bit more information, which we will dive into in just a moment. You can see that if we take that out of consideration and we only have Trump and DeSantis, only 2 states show Ron DeSantis in a good position. Wisconsin, which would be 50 to 50, narrow, but the victory would give him the upper hand because the Republican primary system is really interesting. And then in Tennessee, the projected victory here would be 53 to 47. I mean, it is crazy to think about that Wisconsin and Tennessee, based off polls that might be outdated now, are the only two states that show Ron DeSantis in a good position, especially the state of Florida, that shows Donald Trump with a 62% victory in a Trump-DeSantis head-to-head. It is fascinating to see how a candidate who went from a 20-point victory in the 2022 midterm elections, a 19.4% victory over the former Republican governor in the general election. Charlie Crist served as the Republican governor, became an independent, ran for Senate, allowed Marco Rubio to be in the U.S. Senate, then came again to the United States House, ran as a Democrat, won, ran again as a Democrat for the governor's race, and this time lost by 20 percentage points. The biggest victory for the GOP in Florida's governor's race in nearly, half a century. I mean, this is actually the biggest, according to Ron DeSantis, in history. But when it comes down to actual victories over the Democratic Party, one of the biggest in United States history when it comes down to swing states and Florida history. So with all of this, I mean, we sort of see Ron DeSantis should be doing a lot better, but it is very clear that even following the debate, there is no movement in national polls. There is some reconsiderations around who people are considering. We covered this in the poll immediately following the debate that showed that more voters were considering Ron DeSantis as an option. But the problem is, nearly 80 to 90% of those who are considering Ron DeSantis have either responded before that they are supporting President Trump or are actively supporting President Trump. Ron DeSantis isn't falling out of favor within the GOP as much as we might think. He is very much losing favorability, losing national support, but it's going to Donald Trump. But this isn't to say that voters don't like Ron DeSantis on the GOP side. He is still the most popular GOP primary contender, including ballots or polls that include Donald Trump. It's just that Donald Trump has a much more reliable and loyal base that it trounces any level of consideration that voters might have for candidates like DeSantis. If the ballot had removed Donald Trump today, there is no doubt in my mind that Ron DeSantis would be leading, but that is not the situation that we are in. Donald Trump is in it to win it, and he probably is going to end up winning. But looking at where we are right now with Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis with such a major gap, I mean, you're talking 40 points between the two candidates. It is clear why the Super PAC is now ending their door-knocking campaign in Nevada and other Super Tuesday states. They mentioned them specifically in North Carolina and Texas, some of the more populous states in the country, Texas being the second biggest state, one of the biggest delegate prizes in the country. And you find that they are ending their field operations here over the past couple of weeks. We also see that this door-knocking operation, ending it too, that there is California. It's going to be pulled out. Nevada, a very early state that does determine who ends up winning races. I mean, these are very, very important parts of a presidential election, important parts of a GOP primary, and they are pulling out of them entirely. Now, this isn't to say that they aren't still fighting for Iowa. They actively are, but there is a reason why they have to pull out. Because Ron DeSantis hasn't been able to gain traction against President Trump, there isn't as much funding. The article that I showed you just a few minutes ago from CNN Politics talking about Ron DeSantis and his super PAC asking for $50 million is that his super PAC really wants to raise $100 million by the end of the summer because they know they need the money. They know they're behind, and they know that it's going to take a lot to catch up against the former president. Not only will it take this money from major donors, it's also going to take a shift in public opinion. A lot of this, they believe, can be solved with money that's being raised, but what we've seen so far is that even without outspending Ron DeSantis, Donald Trump has maintained a dominating presence. Donald Trump has Twitter. He has, many major conservative outlets, whether it's Gabber or other groups that he's able, Truth Social, right, able to directly speak to the GOP primary voters. Ron DeSantis doesn't have that. He's fighting against one of the most well-orchestrated, well-machined, refined machines for a presidential campaign on the GOP side, the Trump train. He's going against a very, very powerful candidate, and it is clear that it isn't working. Now, Ron DeSantis, I think, is still trying to keep his name in the game, so he's a presidential hopeful. Not this time, but in 2028. I think as a runner-up, you always come into heavy consideration for a future presidential election bid. But this campaign has suffered many major losses. And it's clear here that they know what's going to happen, and they know that Ron DeSantis is not exactly on track for victory. The argument has been made multiple times. Just wait. When Donald Trump made his announcement and the polls started to narrow up, The DeSantis campaign, the DeSantis surrogates said, wait for him to announce. Never Back Down had already existed. They had been promoting Ron DeSantis. They had been pushing for him to run. They made the argument for him. Wait for the announcement. The announcement happened. His numbers dipped. Wait for the first debate. The first debate happened. His numbers haven't improved enough. Time and time again, we have been told to wait. Wait till Iowa. New Hampshire, he'll break through. Nevada, he'll break through. Now they're pulling out of Nevada. Wait and wait and wait. And when is this point that Ron DeSantis does well? Because the numbers aren't on his side. The forecasts aren't on his side. The betting markets aren't on his side. The fundraising isn't on his side. What is on Ron DeSantis' side? Nothing and nobody. The endorsement race is being won by President Trump. The early state race is being won by President Trump in straw poll after straw poll after straw poll after poll after poll after poll. There is a reason why Donald Trump starts off so strong in this GOP primary. It is because he's front-loaded. He's done so well and he builds momentum, and we know he will build momentum, which is why pulling out of Nevada is such a bad look for Ron DeSantis. Because in 2016, at this point in time, Donald Trump led by just 11.5% nationwide. He finished with just a 19.5% advantage over Ted Cruz. Today, he is at a 40-point advantage. 40-point advantage. And we can see that the reason why Donald Trump had this gain in national support was because he did so well very early on. Iowa happened, he lost. Ted Cruz was able to defeat him. You see here that it wasn't too big of a difference, 8 to 7 delegates, but it was still a race that was a defining moment for the Trump campaign, that you aren't going to win them all. But then came New Hampshire. They funneled all their money, all their energy, all their ground game into New Hampshire. 7-8 days later, Donald Trump wins handedly. 12 delegates to 4 to 3 to 1. Then he won South Carolina, won all 50 delegates in the state, and then he won Nevada. He was able to run up the states of New Hampshire, South Carolina, and Nevada, and by then, the momentum had shifted. What Ted Cruz's victory in Iowa told was that this race was going to be competitive. What Donald Trump's victory in New Hampshire, South Carolina, and Nevada told was that it wasn't. That Donald Trump was on track for very, very large victories. So then Trump won Alabama, Arkansas, Georgia, Massachusetts, Tennessee, a number of states, Virginia, Super Tuesday, Trump. Cruz was able to win in Alaska, barely. Cruz was able to win in Oklahoma, barely. Rubio was able to win in Minnesota, barely. The only major victory here was for Ted Cruz in Texas, 104 delegates to Donald Trump's 48. But he couldn't even win the winner-take-all threshold of 50% statewide in his own home state. Donald Trump's going to take Ron DeSantis' home state of Florida and run up the numbers and win the winner-take-all state, as he did to Marco Rubio in the 2016 race. We can see Florida here, 99 delegates for Donald Trump. Winner take all. Defeated the incumbent GOP senator who was on the ballot that election year. The interesting thing about what we're seeing right now happen with Ron DeSantis is that they were going to try to take this strategy where Trump was going to win Iowa, but they were going to win New Hampshire. They were going to win South Carolina, and they were going to win Nevada. It is clear now that they're giving up the state of Nevada. In so many ways, it's similar to how you see campaigns pulling out ads. Whenever you see an article about a campaign pulling out ads, there's two reasons. One, they either have such a tremendous victory expectation, an expected victory, that they don't think it's going to be competitive. They don't need to spend money there. Two, they don't have the money. They know they're going to lose the state, so they're trying to cut their losses and trying to focus on other states. That is what is likely happening here. I could be proven wrong in about 6 months from now. We could see Ron DeSantis winning Nevada, winning South Carolina, winning, a bunch of states, rechanging and reshaping the way we look at the GOP primary. But where I am today, I see this as a display of weakness. Even though it isn't DeSantis' official campaign, itself, this super PAC has been funding Ron DeSantis. They are the ones pulling in the tens of millions of dollars. They are the ones calling the shots with door knocking and ground game and strategy and digital and communications. They are the people. They are the minds that got Ron DeSantis here in the first place, that got him to that 13.5%. But a candidate can drag down a campaign. The super PAC can only push you so far. And it is clear here today and now that Ron DeSantis' super PAC is starting to show us the beginning of the end of what was supposed to be the Titan Slayers campaign, which is collapsing in and in and in on itself to a point where maybe in 6 months from now, Ron DeSantis may no longer be as politically relevant as he is today. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2024 presidential GOP election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.